The art of polite English, sounding smarter and more academic. Introduction. Do you want your English to sound a little more gentle, a little more thoughtful, or maybe like someone who knows a lot? Many people feel this way. You might know many English words and grammar rules, but sometimes the way you say things can sound too direct, or even a bit rude. This can cause confusion or make you feel less sure when you share your thoughts, especially in important talks or with people from different places. Picture talking in a way that lets you share your ideas without accidentally upsetting anyone, and with a smart, smooth style. This book is like a helpful friend, showing you a small, but very strong part of English that can change how you speak. This book is mainly about learning a special skill in English that helps you talk in a way that is more polite, not so direct, and sounds more like a smart student or expert. This skill is not about learning new words. It's about learning how to use the words you already know, and some new ones, to sound smarter and more like an expert. The secret to this change is something we call hedging language. Think of hedging as a soft way to make your sentences less strong. Instead of saying something is a sure fact, hedging lets you say it's a possibility, an idea, or likely to be true. It's like adding a soft cushion around your words, making them easier for others to hear and think about. For example, instead of saying this is wrong, you could say, it seems this might be wrong, or someone could say this is not quite right. Also, instead of a strong order like you must do this, a softer way could be, it might be good to think about doing this, or maybe we could look at this choice. Why is this important? Because hedging language is the special touch that makes your English sound more polite, less like an argument, and most importantly, more like a smart person who knows their subject. By using hedging language well, you get many good things. First, you become more polite and careful. Hedging helps you avoid sounding too pushy or demanding. You will learn to share different ideas or suggestions without offending people, which is very useful for building good friendships and working relationships. Imagine having important talks calmly and with confidence, knowing people hear you without thinking you are being mean. Second, you learn to speak more indirectly and with more detail. This book will help you go beyond saying things are just good or bad, to see the many shades of gray that are often part of life and deep thinking. You will learn to show you are not completely sure, that things are possible, and that you have ideas that are not yet final, all signs of careful thought and a clever mind. Lastly, and maybe the most exciting part, you will start sounding more like a student or an expert. Smart people and experienced workers rarely say things are 100% true. They use hedging to show they have thought hard, know there are limits, and share what they found in a careful way. By using hedging, you will instantly make your English better, making your ideas sound more thought out, well-studied, and believable. This is how you start to sound like you really know what you are talking about, even when you are still learning. In short, this book will give you the words to sound not just fluent, but also clever, thoughtful, and respected. In this book, we will look at different kinds of hedging words and phrases. We will explain them clearly, give useful examples, and offer practice to help you use them in your daily English. We will cover simple words like adverbs and helping verbs, and also more complex sentences that show politeness and smart thinking. This is not about learning boring rules. It's about learning how to speak politely and smartly without even thinking. Try each part with interest and a wish to try new things. The more you practice, the more natural these smart ways of talking will become. Get ready to make your English go from just working to being really good. Let's start this journey together. Learning to use hedging is your way to get a more detailed, respectful, and sure voice in English. 1. Understanding polite language. When we talk, or right. It's not just what we say that matters, but how we say it. This is especially true when we want to sound smart and thoughtful. Being polite is more than just saying please or thank you. It's about showing respect for the other person. It means choosing words that don't make them feel pushed or that their feelings aren't important. If we say things too directly, as if we are absolutely sure about everything, it can feel like we are forcing our ideas on others. This can make them feel like their own thoughts don't matter as much. In many English-speaking places, especially in school or work, saying things very directly can seem rude or even a bit proud. Imagine someone in a meeting saying, "Your idea is wrong." They might just want to be quick, but this can stop people from talking more. The person whose idea was called wrong might feel bad or defensive. This can hurt how we talk to each other and even our friendships. This is where being less direct or softening our words can help a lot. It's like putting a soft cover on a firm point. This doesn't mean we are lying or not clear. It means we are being careful with our words to be kind. When we speak less directly, we give the other person time to think and answer without feeling forced. It can make it easier to point out mistakes. For example, instead of saying, "That paper has many mistakes," we could say, "I saw a few places in the paper that might need another look." This is less likely to make someone feel attacked. It makes them more likely to check their work carefully. This helps make things feel more comfortable and makes it easier for people to share ideas and even admit when they're wrong. Making our words softer isn't just about being nice. It's a key part of building trust and getting along with others. It's about protecting what we call face. We all want to look good, and we want others to look good too. If we speak too directly, we might accidentally make someone lose face, which means they feel embarrassed or their reputation is hurt. By using polite, less direct words, we help protect our own face and the face of others. This is very important when talking about difficult things or when we might disagree. This idea of being less direct and softening words is very important in school and work. Think about learning and research. Knowledge is not always simple and clear. There are always different ways to see things, ongoing talks, and new things to find. So, when we write or speak about learning, we need to show this. A researcher rarely says, "This is the absolute truth." Instead, they might say, "The signs point to," or "It seems that," or "Someone could say that." These phrases show that the writer knows their findings are part of a bigger, changing story. They know others might see things differently and more study might be needed. This careful way of speaking shows they are humble and respect the process of learning. It shows they have thought about different ideas and are sharing their thoughts in a calm, thoughtful way. Let's look at a short story to help explain this. Sarah was a new researcher who was very excited about what she found about plants growing. In her first big talk to her department, someone asked her about a part of her experiment. She was sure of her results and said very directly, "My experiment proves that this plant food is the only one that works." Some people in the room nodded, but others looked a bit unsure. Later, her teacher, Dr. Evans, who had a lot of experience, talks to her kindly. He explained that while her results were good, her words might have made other researchers feel ignored. What if someone else found different results in their own studies? Or what if there are other things we haven't thought of yet? Dr. Evans suggested that if Sarah had said something like, "Based on my experiment, this plant food seems to work very well," and the results suggest it could be a big improvement, it would have shared the same main idea, but in a way that invited more talk and showed that other findings or difficult parts were possible. He explained that in learning, we always build on what others have done, and it's important to show we know this. Being too sure can sometimes stop the very talks that lead to new discoveries. Sarah understood that her directness, though from confidence, had accidentally created a wall. She learned that saving face wasn't just about not feeling embarrassed. It was about creating a place where everyone felt their work was valued and that learning was something we do together. This need to soften our words comes from wanting to avoid pushing our beliefs or judgments too hard on others. When we say something very directly, it's like saying, "This is how it is and you must agree." This can be hard for the person listening because it doesn't leave much room for their own thoughts or feelings. Polite language, however, often uses words that suggest possibilities, not certainties. It's like offering an idea to think about, rather than stating a fact that must be accepted. This way shows respect for the listener's freedom to think and decide for themselves. Think about giving advice. If someone says, "You must do this," it can feel like an order. But if they say, "You might want to think about doing this," or "It could be helpful to try this," it feels more like a suggestion, given with care and respect for your choice. This is a very simple example, but it shows a strong idea. Being less direct lets us share our ideas and what we mean without ordering or judging. It makes talking more helpful and less like a fight. In school, this is especially important. When we write a paper or give a talk, we share what we understand about a topic. We want to sound smart, but we also want to seem open to new ideas and willing to discuss them. If we present our findings as facts that cannot be changed, we might push away people who have different experiences or ideas. By using softer words, we show that we know the topic is complex. We are saying, in a way, "Here is what I have found and understood so far, and I am ready to talk about it more and learn from others." This way of speaking is not only more polite, but also more believable. It shows we are thoughtful and know the limits of what we know. This careful use of words also helps us deal with situations that might be awkward or sensitive. For example, if you need to disagree with someone, saying "I disagree" right away can be harsh. A more polite way might be, "I understand what you're saying, but I have a slightly different view," or "That's an interesting idea, and I wonder if we could also look at it this way." These phrases show that you heard the other person, while gently offering a different idea. They aim to solve disagreements in a good way, not to create a fight. This is a sign of smart talking where the goal is to find agreement and move forward together, not to win an argument. This is deeply connected to being thorough in learning. Serious learning happens through thinking hard, debating, and making ideas better over time. If every statement was made with total certainty, there would be little room for this process. Using words that show different levels of certainty, possibility, and opinion is the language tool that lets us do this. It allows us to share ideas, talk about what might happen, and admit what we don't know yet, without sounding unsure in a bad way. It shows a mature understanding of how knowledge is built and shared. So, when we talk about polite language in English, we're not just talking about being nice. We're talking about a smart way to talk that respects the listener, shows that things are complex, and helps us share ideas better and more believably. It's about knowing that sometimes the best way to make a point isn't to shout it, but to suggest it, gently, letting it be thought about and accepted rather than forced. Understanding this is the first step to sounding not just smarter, but more academic and truly thoughtful in your English. It's a skill that opens doors and builds connections, letting your ideas be heard and liked in the best possible way. 2. Using hedging words. There are times in life when our words, even if they are true and clear, can have a bigger effect than we mean. I remember when I was a new teacher, a student who was smart and sure of their ideas showed me a paper. They had found a big mistake in an idea that many people believed. In their excitement, They said, "This whole idea is wrong." Everyone in the room was surprised and felt a bit defensive. The students' discovery was good, but how they said it felt like hitting something hard. It stopped people from talking instead of making them want to talk. This was a big lesson for me and for the student about talking well. It wasn't about not telling the truth, but about finding a way to say the truth that respects others and makes them think. This is where the special power of what we call hedging words really shows. So, what are these hedging words we have talked about? Think of them as gentle pushes, not hard shoves, in our talks and writings. They are the quiet helpers that let us share ideas without sounding like we know everything or are completely sure. Instead of saying something is a solid, unbreakable fact, hedging words help us say it as a chance, a suggestion, or something we see. They are like a soft handshake instead of a tight grip, a polite nod instead of a stare. Let's look at some easy examples. Imagine you want to suggest a different way to do something. You could say, "You are doing it the wrong way." That sounds mean, doesn't it? It might make the other person feel silly or attacked. But what if you said, "It seems there might be another way we could do this, or perhaps we could try this other way"? Now, the words sound less like a judgment and more like an offer to explore together. The words "it seems" and "perhaps" act like soft pillows. They don't say your idea isn't good, but they show that other ideas might be good too, and they invite the other person to think with you. These are not words you use when you are not sure of yourself. It's the other way around. Using hedging words often shows you understand the subject better. It shows you know that a topic can be complicated, that you have thought about different sides, and that you know being completely sure is rare, especially in school or when talking about hard things. It is a sign of a mature mind. When you say, "This makes us think that," instead of "This proves that," you are not making your point weaker. You are making it stronger by showing you know the limits of what you have and how knowledge is built. Carefully. You are showing that you are thinking carefully, not just saying something as a rule. The power of making things softer is very big in our daily talks. Clear statements, though sometimes needed, can easily sound bossy, like you are blaming someone, or even proud. Think about the difference between saying, "You must finish this paper by tomorrow," and "It would be very helpful if the paper could be done by tomorrow," or "I was hoping we might be able to finish the paper by tomorrow." The first sentence sounds like an order, but the second and third use phrases like "It would be very helpful," and "I was hoping we might," to make the request softer. They still say the paper is needed, but they do it in a way that is much nicer and less likely to cause problems. Making things softer is very important for keeping good relationships and making sure your message is heard with an open mind, not with resistance. This brings us to the world of school and learning. In school writings and talks, hedging words are not just about being polite. They are very important for being trusted. Think about science research, history studies, or thinking about ideas. It is very rare to find one single, absolute truth that can be said without any changes. Instead, people in school share what they find, their ideas, and their arguments that are backed by proof. But they also say what the limits might be, what else needs to be studied, and that other ideas might be possible. For example, a scientist might find a new connection between two things. They would not just say, "Thing A causes thing B." Instead, they would likely say, "Our findings suggest a link between thing A and thing B," or "It appears that thing A might have a part in thing B." The words "suggest" and "appears" are hedging. They show that what was found is important and points in a certain direction, but they also leave room for more study and changes. This careful way of speaking is what makes schoolwork believable. It shows that the writer has thought hard about their own work and respects the strict rules of learning. It's about building a case, step by step, with careful thought instead of making a bold statement without proof. So, when is it good to be direct, and when does it become not nice or weak in school? Being direct is often best when it's very important to be clear and there's no chance of offending someone. For example, in a dangerous situation, a clear, direct command like stop is needed. When giving simple, clear instructions where not understanding could be dangerous, being direct is key. But when talking about opinions, asking for things, giving feedback, or sharing hard ideas, being direct can quickly cause problems. If you tell a coworker, your idea is bad, you have stopped the talk. If you say, I'm not sure that idea is the best, you have made it possible to talk more. In school, direct statements without any changes often show that someone hasn't thought critically or has made a complex topic too simple. A statement like all students learn the same way is weak in school because it ignores all the studies about how different people learn. A more careful, hedged statement like it seems that many students do better with different ways of teaching is much stronger in school. Let's look more closely at how certain hedging words change meaning and how they sound. Think about the difference between might and could. If I say, we might go to the park, it means it's possible, but it's a bit less sure, maybe depending on other things. If I say, we could go to the park, it often means it's a possible choice, maybe one of many good choices, and I'm suggesting it is something we can do. The difference is small, but it's there. Might can sometimes sound a little more unsure than could. Another pair to think about is perhaps and maybe. Both are very common hedging words that show you are not completely sure. Perhaps often sounds a little more formal and is used more in writing. Maybe is used more in everyday talking. If I say, perhaps this is why it's late, it sounds very careful. If I say, maybe this is why it's late, it's a bit more casual. Then we have words that show how often something happens or a general trend, like generally, often, usually, tend to. Instead of saying, students never pay attention after lunch, which is a very strong, absolute statement, you could say, students tend to find it harder to focus after lunch, or students often seem a little tired after lunch. These phrases show that there might be exceptions, but they describe a general pattern or observation. This makes the statement feel more real and less likely to be argued by someone who knows a student who does pay attention after lunch. Using a little or somewhat also helps to soften things. Instead of saying, this plan is bad, you could say, this plan seems a little not ready, or there are somewhat worrying parts to this plan. These phrases show that there's a problem without making it sound like a total failure. They invite helpful suggestions instead of complete rejection. They are gentle ways to point out places that can be made better. In the end, learning to use hedging language is about finding a more thoughtful and caring way to communicate. It's about knowing that our words have an effect, and that by choosing them with care, we can help people understand each other better, build stronger relationships, and share our ideas with more confidence and trust. It's a skill that, when you learn it well, will make your interactions better in many ways, making you sound not just smarter, but also more thoughtful and respectful. After looking at the basic meaning and purpose of these important words, we are now ready to look at different types of hedging words and how to use them well when you speak and when you write. 3. Indirect communication. When we talk to people, saying things very directly can sometimes feel a bit harsh, like a sharp edge. It's useful when things are urgent or with people we know very well. But other times, it can make people feel exposed, like they're being challenged or even misunderstood. Imagine telling a friend, your new idea is bad. The words are plain, but they can feel like a cold wind that makes someone feel sad and stops them from talking. This is where talking in a less direct way comes in handy. It's a softer, more thoughtful way to share our thoughts. It means choosing our words not just for what they mean, but for how they will make the other person feel. This way, our messages are heard with respect and care. Why is this gentleness so important? In many places and in school or work, talking indirectly isn't a sign of being weak, but of being wise. It shows we've thought about how the other person feels. It shows we want things to go smoothly between us. Saying something directly often makes it sound like a final, unchangeable fact. This leaves little room for discussion or for the other person to feel okay. Talking indirectly, however, opens a door. It suggests new ideas, welcomes working together, and shows that the speaker doesn't have all the answers. This is seen as being humble and is highly respected. Think about giving feedback on someone's work. Saying directly, "This part is confusing," can feel like a personal attack. But saying, "I found this part a little hard to understand," or maybe we could try another way to explain this point, invites a chat, not a fight. It shows you are on the same team, trying to make things better together. This is where our main idea, using soft words, becomes very important. Soft words are the main way we can talk indirectly. These are the small words and phrases we add to our sentences to make our statements less strong, to show we're not completely sure, or to suggest things instead of demanding them. Think of phrases like "it seems." One might say, perhaps, maybe, and tend to. They don't change the main idea you want to share, but they change how you share it. Instead of saying something is a definite truth, soft words let us present it as a possibility, something we've noticed, or an idea based on thinking. For example, instead of saying, "Your research is wrong," a softer way might be, "It looks like there are some parts of the research that could be made better with more study." This small change turns a statement that could cause a fight into a helpful suggestion. It makes it easier to have a good talk. There are two main good things about this way of talking. It helps us get along with others, and it helps us in school or work. When we talk indirectly, using soft words, it helps our relationships run smoothly. It shows we are polite, which is key to good manners and getting along well with others. When we use soft words, we are basically saying, "I respect your mind and your feelings. I'm sharing my thoughts, but I'm not forcing them on you." This care can stop misunderstandings and build a good connection. It's like giving a gift wrapped in pretty paper instead of just handing it over. The gift is the same, but the wrapping makes it nicer to receive. In school and work, using soft words isn't just polite, it shows we are thinking carefully and are honest. The world of knowledge is huge and complicated, and very few things are ever 100% certain. In academic talks, it's important to be careful and admit when we don't know everything. When people doing research use soft words, they show they understand that knowledge can change and that they aren't claiming too much. Phrases like "it is thought," "this could mean," or "the information seems to agree with" show that their findings are based on what we know now, which might change with new discoveries. This humility is very important. It shows that the speaker or writer is open to new information and new ideas, rather than acting like their work is the final answer. It shows they understand that learning is a journey, not a final stop. Think about how different a direct statement sounds compared to a softer one. If you say, "This idea is wrong," you are making a final judgment. This can make the other person feel defensive, like they are being attacked, and less likely to listen to your reasons. But if you say, "One might think that this idea has some problems," or "it seems to me that we could look at this in another way here," you are inviting the other person to think about your idea. You are not saying they are wrong, but suggesting a different way to look at things. This change from certainty to possibility completely changes how the listener feels. They are more likely to listen with an open mind, think about what you say, and maybe even agree with you, because you approached them with respect and a wish to work together. This is how talking indirectly, by using soft words, helps you sound not only smarter, but also more believable and easier to talk to. It's important to remember that talking indirectly, while helpful, needs to be done with care. The goal isn't to be so unclear that no one understands you, or to avoid taking responsibility for what you say. Good use of soft words means being clear while still being polite and careful. It means being exact in your indirectness. For example, if you say, maybe something could be done about this problem, it's very unclear. But if you say, it seems like a more organized plan might help with this issue, you are still talking indirectly, but you are also giving a clearer idea of what could be done. The main thing is to find a balance where your message is understood, but in a way that respects the listener and creates a good feeling for talking. When we move away from saying things as absolute facts and towards softer, more unsure language, we are not showing less confidence or knowledge. It's quite the opposite. By admitting that things are complex and offering our ideas as possibilities rather than definite statements, we show we are more thoughtful and mature in our thinking. When a student says, I think this experiment might show that they sound more involved in the science and less like someone just trying to memorize facts. They show they understand that scientific ideas are often based on evidence and can be changed. This is exactly what teachers and other students look for. A mind that thinks about ideas, looks at them from different sides, and understands that much of what we know is not set in stone. The possible problems with talking indirectly, and especially with using soft words the wrong way, are becoming unclear or hard to pin down. If someone asks for a direct answer and you reply with many perhaps and it seems, they might feel you are trying to avoid the question or that you don't have a strong opinion. This can be annoying and can make people doubt you. The skill is knowing when to be direct and when to use soft words. For example, in a dangerous situation, direct commands are needed or move are not times for polite indirection. Also, if a coworker asks your opinion on a specific plan and you give a lot of vague suggestions without a clear answer, they might question if you are committed or if you can make a decision. So, while soft words are a powerful tool for politeness and academic tone, they must be used wisely. The aim is to make communication better, not to hide things. To show this, let's look at a common situation. Sarah is a new researcher working with Dr. Evans, an experienced professor. Sarah has finished writing a part of a paper they are working on together, and she needs to share her findings. If Sarah were to say to Dr. Evans, my results prove that X is true, it might sound too sure of herself and maybe a bit too bold to her teacher. Dr. Evans, with many years of experience, knows that research findings are rarely absolute proof. Instead, Sarah might say, Dr. Evans, I finished looking at the information for this part. It seems like the information suggests a strong link between X and Y. I would like to hear your thoughts on whether this way of seeing it is strong enough for the paper. Here, Sarah uses it seems and suggests to present her findings as interpretations of the information, not as facts that cannot be changed. She also uses I would like to hear your thoughts, which is a polite way of asking for feedback and showing respect for Dr. Evans' knowledge. This indirect way of talking not only shows Sarah understands how to act in academic settings, but also helps build a working relationship where they both feel respected. It makes her sound more thoughtful and less like someone trying to state their own ideas without considering the bigger picture or what others think. This careful use of words is what makes everyday talk different from more formal, academic talk. While saying I don't agree might be okay with close friends in an academic paper, it would be much better to say, this idea seems to miss an important point, or another way to look at it might be considered. This small change in words turns a statement that could cause disagreement into an invitation to think together. It shows that the writer isn't just stating an opinion, but is having a reasoned discussion, admitting that other ideas might exist and be valid. This is the key to sounding smarter and more academic, showing you can think in detail and have respectful conversations. Moving from directness to indirectness, especially by using soft words in a smart way, is a process of improvement. It's about understanding that sometimes the best way to share an idea is not by shouting it out loud, but by gently helping someone discover it for themselves. It's about building connections of understanding, not walls of certainty. After looking at why indirect communication is a key part of polite and academic English, and how soft words are the main way to do it, we will now look at the different types and common examples of these very useful soft words. Knowing the what and why now will help us learn the how. 4. Academic tone in English. The way we talk and write can really change how people think about us. In school and at work, there's a certain way of speaking and writing that sounds smarter, more informed, and more respected. This is often called an academic tone. It doesn't mean using big, hard words just to sound fancy. It means saying things in a careful and exact way that shows you've thought a lot about your topic. Think about it like this. When you tell a friend a story, you might say, "I know exactly what happened, and this is the truth." But in a school paper or a formal talk, saying something with that much certainty can sound too strong, or like you haven't thought about other possibilities. An academic tone means knowing that knowledge can be tricky, and there are often different ways to see things. It means sharing your ideas not as things that are always true, but as ideas that are well supported or make good sense. This is where our main tool, hedging language, becomes very important. Hedging language uses words and phrases in English to make statements less direct, more polite, or to show that you're not completely sure. Examples are itseems, one might say, perhaps, maybe, and tend to. These words help us make our claims softer, show we respect what others think, and share our ideas in a more thoughtful way. They help us avoid sounding too sure of ourselves or like we think we know everything, which is important in formal settings or when talking to people from different backgrounds. By using hedging, we can manage how people see us, build good relationships, and share our ideas in a more thoughtful way. When you use hedging, you are showing that you've done your homework and thought about different ideas. It shows you know that things aren't always simple and clear. For example, instead of saying, "This idea is wrong," you might say, "This idea seems to have some problems," or "It looks like this idea might not explain all the facts." This doesn't make you sound less smart, it makes you sound like a careful thinker who understands that things can be complicated. This carefulness is a sign of academic thinking. It means you've looked at the facts, thought about other ways to understand them, and are sharing your thoughts humbly. Let's meet a student named Sarah. Sarah was a smart student with many ideas, but in her first university class, she often spoke very directly. When a teacher shared an idea about history, Sarah would interrupt, saying, "But that's not right. The real reason was X." Her points were often good, but the way she said them could sound too strong, like she was challenging that teacher. Her professor, Dr. Evans, who was kind and very experienced, noticed this. He saw Sarah was smart, but her directness sometimes stopped her from really connecting with the material and with her classmates. One day, Dr. Evans spoke to Sarah after class. "Sarah," he said kindly, "your ideas are good, but in academic talks, we often find that softening our words helps People listen to our ideas more openly. It's not about hiding what you think, but about sharing it in a way that makes people want to talk more, not shut down the conversation. He explained hedging, giving her examples like it suggests it is possible that, and one might think about. He told her these phrases don't make her arguments weaker. They actually make them stronger, because they show she has thought about other possibilities and isn't claiming to have the final answer. At first, Sarah was a bit confused. Why would she want to sound less sure? She thought being sure of herself was important. But Dr. Evans explained that in academia, certainty comes from strong proof and admitting what you don't know. By using hedging, she was showing she understood this. It was a way of saying, here is what I understand based on the facts I have, and I'm open to learning more. Sarah decided to try. In her next paper, instead of saying, the author's main point is why, she wrote, the author's main point seems to be why. She changed this evidence proves Z to this evidence suggests Z. She started noticing how often academics in her books used phrases like it seems smart to think, one could say, that, and the numbers seem to show. It was like she was learning a secret language. The change was amazing. Her teachers started saying her work showed thoughtful thinking and a balanced view. Her classmates seemed more eager to talk about her ideas, seeing her as someone open to discussion rather than someone who had all the answers. Her grades got better, not just because her ideas were good, but because the way she shared them made them more convincing and believable in an academic setting. Sarah learned that an academic tone isn't about being distant or cold. It's about being exact, respectful, and honest in your thinking. This brings us to an important point. How does using hedging make a statement sound less like a personal opinion and more like something based on research? When you use phrases like it seems, it looks like, or one might say, you are taking the focus away from your personal belief and putting it on the facts or the logical steps. For instance, saying I think the economy will get better is a personal opinion. It's strong, but it's just what you think. But saying economic signs suggest that the economy might get better in the next few months sounds very different. The words economic signs suggest point to outside information, making the statement based on something we can see. The word might show some uncertainty, admitting that guesses aren't always right. This makes the statement sound like a conclusion from studying something rather than just a guess. In academic writing, we often build on what others have already done. We join a conversation that has been going on for a long time. Hedging helps us show where our contribution fits into that conversation. When we say something suggests or indicates, we are showing that our findings are part of a larger body of knowledge, and that we are carefully understanding that knowledge. It's like pointing to a map instead of just saying I think this is the way. The map shows research, facts, and what is generally known. Also, hedging helps deal with the uncertainty that is common in many areas of study. Science, for example, is always changing. What we believe is true today might be changed or even proven wrong later. Researchers use hedging all the time to show this. They might say, our results tend to support the idea instead of our results prove the idea. This is because one study rarely proves anything for sure. It adds evidence, and a lot of evidence over time leads to stronger conclusions. By using hedging, researchers are being honest about the fact that scientific knowledge can change and showing they understand how science works. What bad things can happen if you don't use hedging in an academic setting, and how can hedging help avoid these problems? The most immediate risk of not using hedging is sounding too proud or too sure of yourself. When someone makes very strong statements without any limits, especially on difficult subjects, it can seem like they think they understand everything perfectly, perhaps without fully considering all the facts or other viewpoints. This can make others feel distant from you, including classmates and teachers who might have different ideas or who know more about the details of the subject. It can make you seem less friendly and less open to working with others or hearing criticism. Another big risk is sounding like you don't know what you're talking about or even being wrong. If you state something as a definite fact and it turns out to be wrong, or if there are well-known arguments against it that you seem unaware of, people might not trust you as much. Hedging acts like a safety net. By saying something seems to be the case or it is possible that, you are allowing for the chance that you might be mistaken, or that there are other correct ways to understand it. This shows maturity and a willingness to learn. If new facts come out or a different argument is made, your hedging language means you haven't trapped yourself. You can change your position more easily without looking like you were wrong. Think about a student giving a project about climate change. If they say, climate change is definitely caused by humans, and there's no other reason, teachers or classmates might point out natural climate changes or how complex it is to say that only human actions cause specific events. This direct statement, even if the student strongly believes it, could stop discussion and make them seem unaware of the wider scientific conversation. However, if the student says, most scientists, supported by lots of data, suggest that human actions are the main reason for recent climate change. While natural things can affect climate, the warming we're seeing seems to be happening faster and on a bigger scale than before, and is strongly linked to the rise in gases that trap heat. They are making a much more balanced and academically sound argument. The phrases suggests, can affect, seems to be, and is strongly linked are all forms of hedging. They acknowledge that the issue is complex, that there's agreement among scientists, and that the conclusion is based on evidence, while still getting the main point across about human impact. This way of speaking invites discussion and shows a deeper understanding of how science works. Hedging also helps connect the directness of everyday talk with the more indirect, careful style of academic writing. In everyday life, we often speak directly. We say, I like this is good, or you should do this. This is fine for most social situations. But when we enter an academic or work setting, this directness can sometimes seem rude, too much like an opinion, or even impolite. For example, imagine you are in a meeting and you don't agree with a colleague's idea. In a casual setting, you might say that idea won't work. In an academic or work setting, this could sound like you're dismissing it. Using hedging, you might say, I have some worries about that idea. It seems the money might be a problem, and I'm wondering if we've fully thought about how it could affect the time we have. Maybe we could look at other ways that could help with these issues? This approach softens the disagreement, presents it as a concern rather than a complete rejection, and opens the door for helpful problem solving. You are still sharing your doubts, but you are doing so in a way that is polite, respectful, and helpful. This skill of speaking indirectly, yet clearly, takes practice. It's about finding the right balance. You don't want to use so much hedging that your message becomes unclear or that you sound unsure. The goal is to use hedging carefully to be more polite, show you're thinking critically, and share a smart understanding of your subject. It's about making your voice sound not just louder, but wiser and more thoughtful. By learning how to add these small, but powerful hedging phrases to our communication, we start to develop a more sophisticated and respected academic voice. This new ability to share ideas with exactness and humility prepares us to look at specific types of hedging and how they can be used in different academic situations. making sure our arguments are not only heard, but also taken seriously. Conclusion: as we finish our look at the art of polite English, you might have started to see how words can change how people think. We have looked at hedging. These are special words and phrases that help us say things in a gentler, more polite, and more thoughtful way. You have learned how small word choices can change how people understand your ideas. This makes what you say easier to accept, less like an argument, and more like something you would hear in school or a serious discussion. From asking for things softly to sharing ideas carefully, hedging has been our guide. In a world that often likes direct talk, being able to speak politely is very useful. Hedging, as we have seen, is a big part of this politeness. It lets us share our thoughts without forcing them on others. It helps us offer ideas instead of telling people what to do. It also lets us disagree without being rude. Think about how phrases like "it might be good to think about" or "maybe we can look at" can help people work together. A blunt statement might stop them from working together. Also, speaking in a less direct way, which hedging helps with, is important in many social and work settings. It creates a space for more careful thought and helps avoid fights. This does not mean hiding what you think. It means thinking about how the other person feels and how your words might affect them. Instead of saying "this is wrong," you could say, "I'm not completely sure this matches the facts," which starts a conversation instead of making someone defensive. And then there's how to sound like you know a lot. This doesn't mean using hard words. It means showing you understand things well, admitting when you don't know everything, and sharing information with care. Hedging helps you do this. It shows you have thought about different sides. It shows your ideas are based on proof. It shows you are open to learning more. Phrases like "the proof seems to show" or "it is possible" that make your statements seem more true and smart. They show you are not saying things are for sure, but that you have good reasons for what you say. The real strength of hedging is using it all the time. It's not just a few tricks to use sometimes. It's a new way of talking. I hope this book has given you good tools and made you more aware. As you talk to people each day, in emails, meetings, or even regular chats, try to find chances to use these ways of speaking. Think about when you want to share an idea, make a suggestion, or show a finding. Could a little hedging make it softer or more precise? For example, when giving feedback, instead of saying "your paper is hard to understand," you could try "I'm finding this part a little hard to follow. Maybe we can make the steps clearer?" When asking for something, instead of "do this now," think "would it be possible for you to look at this by the end of the day?" And when you're not sure about something, instead of saying "I don't know," try "I'm not completely sure about that right now, but I can find out for you." Watch how others use hedging. You might notice that when someone speaks this way, they seem more thoughtful, more believable, and easier to talk to. This is what you can do with your own words. Remember, the goal is not to sound unsure, but to sound thoughtful and polite. At first, it might feel a bit strange to pick these words on purpose. That's okay. With practice, it will feel more natural, and you will see the good results. Learning to speak and write polite and academic English is a path you keep walking. The ideas about hedging we have talked about are not strict rules. They are a flexible way of talking that will help you in your life, both personal and work. As you face new things and hear different ideas, you will find even better ways to use hedging. Keep watching, keep trying, and keep making your way better. It's very likely that with more practice, you will start using these ways of speaking without even thinking about it. By using the art of hedging, you are not just getting better at English. You are getting better at connecting with people, convincing them, and being seen as someone who is more thoughtful, more believable, and more skilled at talking. We wish you the very best as you keep making your skills better. May your words always be chosen with care, your talks always be polite, and your academic voice always be clear and strong.